In this video today, I'm going to talk about a financial plan that does not work. And I'm also going to talk about some of the dynamics in this relationship among this couple that really led to a scenario that's sort of a cautionary tale when it comes to financial planning. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Zach Morris, and I'm the founder of Pace's Ferry Wealth Advisors. And if you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe so you can be notified of more videos in the future. But let's go ahead and jump into this analysis. James and Anna have a little over 1.6 million in assets. James is still working and he has about 800,000 in his 401k, about half of which is in a Roth 401k and half of it is in a traditional 401k. James is right around 61 years old and Anna is right around 62. Michael also has an individual account of $140,000 in after-tax money. And then Anna has an IRA of $695,000 that she had rolled out from her 401k because she just recently retired. Anna originally called us because she wanted to know if she made a mistake by taking Social Security early at 62. So if somebody takes Social Security and they decided they made a mistake, they can actually pay back all the benefits as well as any taxes that were withheld from their benefit, and they can make it like it never even happened. So that's what we recommended to Anna, because if she were to go back and get work while she's taking Social Security prior to full retirement age, she might not get any benefit from Social Security because she has the potential of failing what's called the earnings test, where if you make over roughly $21,000 a year, you can actually have Social Security benefits withheld from you. And so that is why we advised her to pay it back. So with the total of $1.6 million and James wanting to retire at age 65, their financial plan didn't work. And here's the reason why. So James and Anna shared with me that they wanted to spend $300,000 a year. And as we got into the financial plan and talking about all of their goals and all of their ability to save, we realized that they had only been saving what was in their 401k. And that's why they only had money for the most part in their IRA or traditional 401ks, is because when you save money into a 401k, it can kind of be out of sight, out of mind. You don't have to think about it, and it doesn't burn a hole in your pocket when it hits your checking account, right? So we found out that they had only been saving into their 401k during their working years. So what we found out in conversation with James and Anna is that even though they told us that they wanted to spend $300,000 a year after tax in retirement, and that's what they felt like they could comfortably do, for the past many years, they'd been spending much, much more than that. And they didn't realize it because they never talked about finances with each other. So he was making about $400,000 a year before tax, and she was making about $250,000. After they saved into their 401k and paid taxes, he was bringing home about $275,000, and she was bringing about $140,000 home after tax. Now, they were spending all of that. So if you add that up, it means that they were spending about $415,000 a year after tax, and they were both spending money on their own things. So they never really talked about it, and they didn't know what the other one was spending money on. They said, your money is your money, my money is my money, and we're just going to save money in our 401k and we'll be fine. And so they never really talked about it and they didn't think about it. He was spending money on country clubs, golf trips, watches valued at $20,000 to $40,000 each, car payments on a $100,000 car, and the mortgage. And she was taking care of all the household expenses. So she was covering the lawn care, house maintenance, housekeepers, decorating the house, going on trips with friends. And she was also eating out while he was traveling. So she would go and eat at nice restaurants while he was traveling and was spending about $400 a week, or about $20,000 a year on eating out. So their ideal goal was to retire at age 65. Now, we always ask for an ideal and an acceptable age, right? So their ideal goal was 65, and James said he'd be willing to work until 70. Now, we always caution people when they say they're willing to work until 70 or 75, because sometimes companies will reorganize, they'll do a reorg, and sometimes it's hard to find a job if you're 70 years old. So we've had a lot of clients who have lost their jobs around 68, 69, and it was too difficult for them to find another job and go through all that effort of finding another job. But they had been doing a good job in their financial planning and saving. And so at that time, we were able to review it and say, okay, based on everything, you don't need to go back to work for one more year. We can fast forward Social Security, we can make some changes and adjustments, and you're going to be fine. There's no reason to work further. So we always caution people when they say it's not a problem. I can work until 70 if it makes it work. So James wanted to retire at age 65. And at that time, they wanted to sell their house in Alabama and move to Florida. The problem was that they had recently taken out more money on their mortgage. So they did a cash out refinance to raise money to pay off some debt and also do a big renovation on their current home. So after they sold their home and paid off that mortgage, they were going to net about $850,000. Well, the home that they wanted to buy in Florida, inflation adjusted, was going to be about 1.3, a little bit more than $1.3 million. So they were going to have to come out of pocket for quite a bit of money in order to pay for that house in Florida. Now, if you remember, they had about $1.6 million, and a lot of that was in retirement accounts. So they were going to have to pull quite a bit of cash out of those retirement accounts in order to fund that house. So now let's take a look at their goals. And now remember, their living expenses that we talked about was $300,000, but we know that they're probably spending more than that. But the number we used for sake of the financial plan was $300,000 a year in after-tax spending. And then one of the blind spots for people is typically healthcare. So not a lot of people think about healthcare when they think about their living expenses in retirement, because when you're working, a lot of your healthcare expenses is covered by your employer. They also want to buy a new home in Florida. So when James retires, they want to sell their house in Alabama and move to Florida. So the house in Florida that they want to buy is worth $1.2 million. Of course, you'll see later in the presentation that we adjust that for inflation based on his date of retirement, whether it's at age 65 or at age 70. If James retired at 65, the assets would decline significantly. So here's the age 65 when he retires, and then in 2029, and then the assets would decline quickly because they're spending a lot of money. Now, for the sake of the financial plan, we went with their numbers. We used the $300,000 a year. In order for them to get down to $300,000, they would have to make some significant changes in their lives. But also, in order to make the financial plan work, they're going to have to make even more significant changes. And so I'll show you what we recommended they spend in order to make the plan work. Now, here's James retiring at the age of 65. They get $850,000 in from the sale of the home, and then they're going to buy the home in Florida for $1.3 million. So they're coming out of pocket quite a bit. At the same time, their living expenses, inflation adjusted, is going to be $331,000. But they also have expenses for healthcare and everything like that that are also accounted for in these numbers. So now let's look at the scenario as if they were to work until 70. If James were to work until 70, which was his stretch age, does the financial plan work? So if he were to work until 70, and here's James retiring at a later date in 2034, the assets still go down very quickly with the purchase of the house and their elevated lifetime expenses. So the financial plan, based on an average return scenario, has them running out of money by the year 2041. So what do James and Anna need to do in order to make their financial plan work? So they've got a lot of different variables here, a lot of levers that they can pull. And so we talked to them about all of them. So Anna was not willing to go back to work. So that was off the table. James also had about $500,000 worth of watches, but it was an asset that he truly believed in and really wanted to pass on to the next generation. So he wanted his sons to inherit that watch collection, and so he wasn't willing to sell those in order to fund his retirement. Now, they also had the house that they were going to buy in Florida. Now, that house was really hurting their financial plan because they had so much debt on their current home that they weren't really getting a lot of assets when they sold their current home. So if they were to stay in their house in Alabama, then the plan could also work with the recommended spending amount. The alternative to that was that they could sell their house in Alabama, buy a house in Florida, and match the mortgages. So they would have to buy a house in Florida for a certain value that would not change the amount that they're paying in their mortgages. So their expenses would stay the same in that regard. If they were to buy a much less expensive house, it could really help them and also give them the ability to spend more on other things. So if they were to make those changes with the house and they were to lower their expenses to $175,000 worth of after-tax spending, we were able to make the plan work. And they're going to have to make some significant life changes in order to make this happen. This also assumes that they don't make any changes to their savings today. Now that can make a big difference as well. If James were to say, okay, we're gonna scale down our expenses today and we're gonna start saving instead of $30,000-$40,000 into our 401k, we're gonna start saving 100,000, 150,000, and I'm going to work until 70. So we talked about all of those different scenarios. However, the one that they felt the most comfortable with was trying to decrease their spending in retirement once they got to that age of retirement to $175,000 and either staying in Alabama in their current home or matching the mortgage to a home in Florida. I hope this video is helpful. Please take a moment and click the subscribe button so you can be notified of more videos. And thank you for your time today.